I am extremely excited today to introduce someone to my audience who I met while in South Africa. I was amazingly impressed with her commitment to customer experience and just a pedigree, a background in this field, well trained, has moved through all of the elements that are critical to it, and has brought solutions to the forefront that most mid-sized, smaller businesses definitely are going to need. And if you're a larger business, these scale to your needs as well. So let me introduce to you Sam Burns. Sam, thanks for being with us today. And maybe you can give a little background of yourself. I know I've kind of tried to shortcut that all by saying she's just fabulous and a bag of chips, but tell us a little bit about how you got into the field and what you've been doing in customer experience improvement, particularly in your part of the world and some of the adjacent regions.
Sure. Thanks, Joseph. Thank you very much. Really, my background, I've spent, over the last 25 years in this field. I've had the privilege of working with awesome companies, reporting directly to CEOs that are hugely committed to their customers. So it's been a tremendous learning experience for me working with people like that. And having the hands-on challenges that they've given me basically to run with. I worked in a company where it was very much a startup organization, and they expected, you just make it happen. And so I had the opportunity to drive new initiatives in that company before starting my own. And since starting my own company, Brilliance, 10 years ago, I've worked with numerous companies, large, medium, small, in helping them with their client success. And in doing that, I've found huge fulfillment for starters, because it gives me great joy when a company is successful with their clients, but also to get them to focus on what I believe is really doing the right thing for their customers. So it's not just creating a great customer experience, but doing what's right. And sometimes that's difficult. It's sometimes short-term more profitable to give a great experience, but not necessarily do what's right for the customer. And my emphasis is on let's do both. Let's give great experience, but do what's right from an ethical standpoint.
Well, you've been in industries, financial services, for example, has been one of those industries where at times some people have stepped a little past the line in pursuit of business profitability. And then you see regulatory agencies swoop in and they start protecting the consumer against some of the practices of an industry. So you've kind of been on all sides of this, right? Watching people respond to maybe regulation that's curbing some of the practices, and then other clients who by their DNA have always sought to try to figure out how to do that and still be profitable and sustainable. So let's talk a little bit about Brilliance, because this company that you've crafted has elements of consulting, kind of embedded consulting, remote consulting, but there's been a real movement afoot, I think, in keeping with trends in customer experience broadly, in the way you serve your clients and giving them some of the technology tools that are necessary. We're going to really have a series of interviews with you because I think you have such a suite of tools that people can use across their business that we want to make sure we cover each of them. Let's spend a little time today, if it's okay with you, talking a little bit about tools that help a brand in the culture space, and maybe a little bit about Brilliance and the tool that you've created specific to helping businesses in that way.
Okay. So the culture tool, we call it the culture improvement solution, or in some cases the conduct improvement solution, because it's really about the way the company conducts themselves, and how the customer experiences their culture or their conduct in a way that is appropriate to the customer, but also the right thing for the company to be doing, and a way that creates positive, memorable customer experiences. So the systems that I've created are really there to help companies achieve this in a systematic way. That culture is not an easy thing to change, and I've come across executives that find it quite nebulous to get their hands on. They want hard numbers. This culture thing, it's too fuzzy. So the system helps defuzz it so to speak. Essentially, it makes it quite clear up front to say, well, what are the customer outcomes that you're wanting to achieve? And against those customer outcomes, what are the business practices that need to be in place? Now, where I've done this specifically for financial services with regulations in mind, I've set out already embedded in the system, these are the customer outcomes that you need to achieve, that the regulator wants you to achieve, and these are the business practices against those outcomes that at minimum you need to be looking at. Doesn't mean there won't be more, and as the company evolves, there's likely to be more, or they would tailor it to their environment. But then the company uses the tool to assess how well they have those business practices in place, and where it's not yet in place, have the appropriate action plans accordingly, and that's embedded in the system.
Well, let's make it really concrete. Like, let's take one business practice. Let's link one business practice to a desired outcome. And let's talk about how would you measure against that? So you literally have some data proof points that say, yes, this is our aspiration. This is the practical way in which we demonstrate that aspiration. And then here is the way we measure to make sure that we're on path with both the practical and then ultimately the more aspirational element of it. Can you walk us through just like one thread of that so that somebody could get their head around this, or else it's still going to sound fuzzy, I imagine.
Yeah. So I think just before we go through that one line item is to position how the tool can work for an organization that is just looking to improve their own culture across their own divisions or branches or regions or business units, or an organization that has multiple agents or third parties or franchises, brokers who are representing their brand to the customer. So the system works for both types of setups. So
before you the thread, then let's just take that, if you will. So the technology that you've created, kind of the infrastructure you've created for a business owner, it's going to be applicable if I'm running a franchise business and I need my franchisees to behave in a certain way in accord with the brand, or if these are people that are within a smaller operation, or we got multiple departments potentially, we're gonna be able to measure against the departmental functioning. Is that accurate then?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, so I got that part. Now I'm trying to say, I want them all to behave a certain way. How do I get there, and how do I know?
Right. So the starting point is, what are the customer outcomes? So we don't start with the behaviors, we start with the outcomes. So what is the ideal customer outcome that we want to achieve, and preferably not what the company wants to achieve, i.e. improved sales or improved retention, which they might say is their customer outcomes, but more the outcomes that the client wants them to achieve or needs them to achieve. So to give an example, a client may say, well, a common customer outcome may be that a client requires the products that you offer to be meeting their needs, not only at point of sale, but throughout their customer lifetime. That's a customer outcome. Against that customer outcome, there could be multiple business practices. One business practice could be that in order to achieve that outcome, we as an organization always do thorough market research or customer research specifically to find out what their needs are so that we design our products to meet those needs. Another business practice for that outcome could be that we analyze all our customer data using demographic analysis to see that all our clients at any point in time have the right product for their needs or at their particular life cycle. So those could be just two examples of business practices that the company has.
I got the overarching statement is related to the need states of the customers and fulfillment against those need states. And then we've got these drill down behavioral business practices, execution at the business practice level by demonstrating these kinds of competencies in the business practice on a regular basis. So we got it, we're starting to get it cascading down. And now I got to know, how is it that is, how do I know my franchisee out in the bush of Africa is doing what they need to be doing to represent my brand? Or maybe how do I know that my franchisee in San Francisco is doing the same thing that my franchisee is doing in Denver? So help me a little bit about that. Where is what metrics can you, or how do you build that metrics in? And then how does this technology serve me in terms of being able to watch all that in real time, if you will, or on some kind of a dashboard so I can run my enterprise?
Right, right. So the scoring comes in the moment I, as one of the franchisee heads or divisional heads, goes into a practice and evaluates to what extent do I believe that practice is in place within my division or within my franchise. And that rating gives a score. If I say that is fully in place, so I get top marks, the system's going to demand that I upload evidence to support that. So what is the PDF or the document, the JPEG, the MPEG, whatever file they can upload that gives the supportive evidence to say that that is consistently in place within my division or within my outlet. Now,
so they're really having to go back and support a business case for the presence of the thing, right?
Yeah.
They have to bring the documentation, the data, the proof points to bear, and then upload them into the system. So the system now has their best case for why their score is such.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. And embedded in the system, the company can set these standards to say, if you're going to upload some evidence, here are some tips as to what we're going to look for in that evidence. So it better demonstrate X, Y, Z against that particular business practice. Otherwise, it's not going to be good enough. So that's the one way. They can then say that they have that business practice in place. If they rate the business the practice item or the behavior and say, well, it's not quite yet in place, and they say to what extent it's in place, that gives it a different score. The system then will say, okay, by when will you have it in place? Give a date. Set a deadline for yourself as to when you're going to get this in place and who's going to be responsible for it.
So in many ways, this is a management system that's requiring people not only to demonstrate the presence of it, or in the absence of it, or in process, it is updating them on putting demands on approaching those landmark goals to continue to go on what we all know is a journey to client success.
Yes. And it's an ongoing journey, for sure, for sure. I mean, even when they eventually say, well, no, we've got everything in place, now it's a case of, okay, now maintain it like that. And the business practices never just stay the same forever. There's new business practices that are required as customer needs change or new customer outcomes are intended to be achieved. But another thing the system does,
what's the safeguards of me kind of coming up with some way to game this whole thing? That I put all these numbers that are on the high end. I know what your behavioral standards are. I'm trying to find some way to moxie up those numbers just so that I can fly under the radar of underperformance of my clients.
Yeah. So what the system facilitates is that at an organization level, they can see the reports across all their distributors or all their divisions and compare them. And they can also drill down to see the evidence that each distributor or agent has uploaded. So if they start picking up documentation where the evidence is not sufficiently adequate for this practice being in place, the organization then can call them out on it. And they can, at organization level, they can downgrade that rating score. So based on their evaluation of the evidence, they can say, doesn't come to muster. Let's downgrade them. So, and also in the company,
experience management system at its best, right? Because otherwise, in the absence of this kind of system, people are very haphazardly not knowing, and they may call for certain data sometime and other data other times. There's no real organized approach to this, and there's no ability to maybe look across your landscape and see the best performers and best practices and continually revise your standards based on improvements. And this is a very dynamic system, if you will.
And the system does the chasing up for you. So where there are individuals who've been assigned responsibilities to get certain practices in place by a certain deadline, the system then sends them reminders, and the closer it gets to that deadline, sends them all the more reminders to make sure that they don't miss the deadline, and then provides exception reports if they do miss the deadline. And so there's quite a strong monitoring tool to distribute the responsibility for consistency of customer experience and delivery against the customer outcomes.
So I'm trying to be the cynic, right? And in the moment, I'm, well, okay, how could you possibly have this work for all kinds of industries, right? At some level, wouldn't you have to have some boilerplate understandings of certain industries with certain boilerplate practices loaded into this technology of yours? How would you customize it for my need, in my place, in my part of the world, and in the unique challenges that I face? I mean, how do you respond to that? Because it really does seem like it would be perfectly suited for a specialized industry, but not necessarily something that would be robust across.
Right. So there's like a vanilla template version, which is blank and says, you decide what your customer outcomes are. So this is then a consultative process to say, well, what are the customer outcomes that your clients need you to achieve or want you to achieve? And we extract that information from their customer research data or from their profiling or segmentation and so forth. So we know what they can then input that, and they can say however many outcomes they want to achieve. Once they've got that, we then help them unpack to say, well, what are the business practices that need to be in place to achieve those specific outcomes? So it's totally it's built up by the company up front initially to say these are the outcomes that they want, these are their behaviors that work for them, which is completely different to the existing template that we've got for financial services, which is very specific to the regulatory deliverables, which is just one template that says, if you're wanting help with delivery against these regulatory outcomes, then here's a tool that can do that for you. But it's flexible.
So if I'm following this, you have a very specialized product in a specialized industry. If you're in financial services, this thing is pretty revved up for just a little tweaking. But if you're outside of that industry, the technology itself allows you to customize and set your own objectives, but it still is robust to help you have this mechanism to track from objectives to business practices to accountability. And it enables you to do that in a dynamic way that you run your business in a management by data approach, as opposed to I'm hoping this is going right, or I don't even know how I would measure it sort of thing, which is what a lot of the CX space is filled with. A lot of businesses saying, I have this aspiration, I know what I want to achieve, I don't know how to measure against it, I don't know how to keep track of it, it's too much, it's like boiling the ocean. So it really does feel like you've got the two solutions. So let me take it, let's assume you're in an industry outside of financial services and you want this customized for you to make it happen. The pricing structure of something like this, does it have a separate pricing for consulting and then a separate pricing for the technology? And then if so, is the pricing structure based on how many franchisees I have, how many objectives I have? I mean, give us a little. I mean, I think anybody who really wants more information on this is going to come to you anyway, and they're going to get a drill down on it. But to give them at least another step into the, well, this might be right for me sort of mindset. What can you tell them about the way in which you approach the customization and the pricing of the actual per unit sort of solution?
Right. So first, from a pricing perspective, the price is the same irrespective of whether you're trying to achieve 5 customer outcomes or 20 customer outcomes. The price is the same whether you listed 2 business practices under each outcome or 20 business practices. So that makes no difference. Where there is a difference in pricing is from the number of users. So depending on the size of the organization, they're probably more likely to have more users, or the number of agents or brokers or distributors that they've got, there'd be more users. So that it's a price per user driven solution. There is a sliding scale. So when the volume of users reaches a certain level, the price per user starts coming down, just for the bigger organizations to make it reasonable for them. When it comes to the customization upfront, we split the customization versus the configuration. So there's a certain amount of configuration that we do as part of a standard setup fee, and that setup fee ranges from like $990 to $1,300 for a once-off setup fee, before there's the price per user per month fee for this type of thing would be, I think it's, if we're talking dollars, probably about $38 per person per month. Then there is so that's the upfront configuration once off. But the customization, which entails the consulting, well, that depends on how much consulting they want. If they say, don't worry, we know what our outcomes are, we know what behaviors we want to have in place, fantastic. Tell me what those are. I'll put those in at the upfront configuration, and then it's all yours. Go ahead, enjoy.
Awesome. So there's an implementation, support, and then if you need actual consulting to understand what you want your business to be, it's kind of a different sort of value proposition in its own right. Okay, so if I'm kind of contemplating this, how small a business have you served in these kinds of ways, and then how large a business is relevant to being able to apply these approaches?
Well, the small companies are, this tool generally is not for that small because it expects that you've already got multiple divisions. So unless there are instances where there's small companies that say, we don't have multiple divisions, we just want one person to be doing it for ourselves across the board, and they can then give the evidence that's required and they use this specifically for regulatory purposes, a small company. Great. But generally, when it comes to culture, you're not going to find the smaller companies even talk about culture because, it's just too obvious in a small company. It's in a big company that culture becomes a more tricky thing to manage. So it can be up to any size organization with any number of divisions or any number of distributors. For example, we've got a client who's got 66 distributors at the moment under a single organization, and each one of those distributors then has at least one user actively using the system that is giving their updates as to how well they're progressing against delivering on those outcomes.
So someone is looking at, the aggregate data from across these 66 representative units of the brand and the quality of client success they're generating against their business practices and their objectives. And they're able to really hold together this unwieldy set of entities, making sure they're all rowing in the same direction on behalf of the client. Is that a fair representation?
Yeah.
Let me go to a kind of a mid-sized company that says, look, I'm managing this by spreadsheet. I've got spreadsheets here, I've got spreadsheets there, and Herb over in accounting has got 12 spreadsheets, and we got this under control. Tell me a little bit about why move from the tried and true spreadsheet sort of approach to this to something that's more transparent and dashboardish.
Yeah. So Excel, I think, is fantastic. It's a wonderful tool, and in fact, all the reports that are generated by the system come in Excel, so that the company can then slice and dice it, filter it, do their pivot tables, put whatever column, pie charts and bar charts, whatever they fancy, out of that data that comes from those spreadsheets. But for the input to be spreadsheet based, Oh, the moment that you know it's a larger company, it becomes tricky when you're wanting multiple parties to input data simultaneously without messing up the spreadsheet and without some person becoming a full-time job to collate all these spreadsheets every month or every time the executive needs some reports. Where this solution then just makes that process so much easier, where multiple parties can be using it at any point in time, collates that information real time. Reports are produced at a push of a button at any location, and the effectiveness of certain controls, validations, accuracy, rules that are built into the system, automatic escalations, notifications that go out, that you know Excel just wouldn't be able to cater for all those needs.
And then because many organizations have legacy IT systems, I'm assuming this operates in the cloud and that you're able to not have to do some retrofitting to some antiquated technology platform.
Exactly. Exists in the cloud, yeah.
So let's assume I'm now very interested, right? Like I want to consider this. Pricing seems reasonable. I understand the basic value proposition. I understand how it's going to enable me to manage my company more effectively on the basis of client success. It enables me to yoke together all these disparate entities within an organization or across multiple organizations that represent our brand. I got all that going on. I know I might need a little consultation to get us started. I want to better understand it, maybe even want to see some of the test driving of this technology somehow or another. How would they get a hold of you to do that? And then I should pre-alert that while we're going to talk about this today, there are other solutions that you have in place. So if for some reason this is intriguing, but your organization isn't necessarily suited for this particular solution, please just know we're going to be coming back to Sam to explore some of the other types of ways that she's made this nebulous concept of client success into something that actually is a business operation. So, all right, I did that precursor on future shows, but why don't you tell them how they can get a hold of you as specific to this culture tool?
Right. So email me is probably the easiest way to do it. Samantha@brillianceib.com, or once I've got the new website up and running, it will be sam@brilliancesuccess.com. And I'd be more than happy to give a demo. It's available for clients to see how it's working in practice. They can play with it, they can experience it for themselves, and they can see what the reports look like. And I'd be very, very delighted to speak to companies that would be interested.
All right, let's give that new website address one more time and the email address one more time. We're gonna put it as a show note as well, so you can find it there. But if you're rapidly wanting to get this down for yourself before you look at the show notes, it is
Brilliance for the email address, sam@brilliancesuccess.com, and the new website is brilliancesuccess.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Sam, for taking the time and helping my audience know about it. I was so taken by the thoughtfulness, the systemization of these customer solutions that I couldn't help but want to share it as broadly as we can. This solution will travel everywhere around the world. So wherever you're hearing this or viewing this today, realize this is not a South African solution. This is not a solution that's specific to the US. This is a solution that fits anyone who's looking to manage an enterprise beyond a single unit deliverable to make sure that they're able to hit their overarching objectives. I'm thinking about clients right now as we talk on my list that should certainly be made aware of this. So thank you very much again, Sam. All of the contact information is here. Look for more from Sam as I talk to her about other solutions that she has available that will meet your needs. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you.